Well, we're starting off here in Abuja with the papers, and we have our guests already seated. Akeregha is Abuja Bureau Chief of the Guardian newspapers. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
Good morning.
Well, we're going to start straight away with your own paper, The Guardian, and let us see what it is that you have as the lead headline. You see there, federal government's revenue shortfall, debts, weaken CBN's interventions. Yeah, not one to make you cheer up this morning. It's not as bright as my voice, sadly. And you see other writers there. CBN financing deficit is highly inflationary, says DG LCCI. Could complicate efforts to bring inflation under control. That's according to Fitch. Takes time to fix disparity between revenue and expenditure, says Professor Ajibola. So it looks like this is watering down. The revenue shortfall is watering down whatever it is the CBN has up its sleeves, trying to revive and shake up the economy. And yet, inflation seems to be running away, and it's one of the biggest worries that the CBN usually has. Can you tell us a bit more about this story?
Well, basically, we all know that Nigeria is already in a second wave of recession. And
second wave of COVID-19, second wave of recession.
So you can say
double whammy.
Yeah, you can say that again. So I think the Guardian this morning is actually drawing attention to the dangers of excessive reliability on the CBN to finance the deficit gap. You know, a lot of the MDAs, the funds they even generate, they use the funds to pay their to finance their own overhead cost, and so they then run back to the CBN for intervention. So basically, that's what the Guardian is focusing on this morning and pointing out the danger in over-reliability on the Apex Bank to intervene in the gaps. Yes, in the last 3 days, we have also seen the upward movement of the Brent crude, which is about $52 per barrel now, and the 2021 budget is predicated on $40 a barrel. And so the excess crude, the excess amount coming in, for me, I do not know exactly what the government is doing. Under former President Goodluck Jonathan and Obasanjo, we saw how some of those monies were, the excess crude account was created by the former finance minister, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
But we hear that all of those resources. They're trying to put everything now in the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Yeah, so I think that Sovereign Wealth Fund, to what extent are we also deploying the resources, the monies in the Sovereign Wealth Fund? To the extent that this is coming up now, because if there's proper and efficient utilization of the resources in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we will not be going cap in hand to take the Sukuk funds and then the Chinese loans and all of that. I think generally our presidential system is heavy. It is taking a toll on us, financing all the various arms of government, from the local government levels, states, the federal government, with so many ministers, so many special advisors, and the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies. We have also seen the heavy cost, personnel cost. So all of that is taking its toll on the economy, and that's what the Guardian is pointing out this morning. And so most times the CBN has to intervene. The CBN has to intervene in agriculture, has to intervene in payment of salaries, and the financing the deficits. So the revenue to income gap is getting wider. So once the money you are receiving, the revenue you are receiving, it's not enough to finance your expenditures. That is a challenge.
I know. Just yesterday, the president was expressing worry about, the state of debt.
Yes.
I think we're in debt to the tune of about almost 3 trillion.
Yes, it's huge.
On debt servicing alone.
Yes, it's
it is very worrisome.
And so for capital projects, we are having limited funds to even finance capital needs. So it's a challenge. That's why you are seeing that across the country, you can't exactly see capital projects that are running. That is roads, whether in terms of roads, in terms of key infrastructures, because the monies to finance those capital projects is just not there.
Wow. Oh, looking at the bottom here, you also have what I would like to call the story of the day. Southwest governors Miyetti Allah agreed to flush out killer herdsmen. That's been on for how long now? It culminated in a meeting yesterday in Ondo. in Akure more precisely. And you see there, ban night underage grazing. Falaye accuses federal government of undue ethnic sentiment. Northern elders urge Buhari to douse tension. It wasn't quite the end many had expected, but should we say, is this a happy ending?
Well, I do not think it is. For me, I do not think it's a happy ending when you see about 6 governors of a region engaging Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association. I think there's too much emphasis, too much prominence have been given to this Mieti Allah group. When the Kankari boys were kidnapped, first the federal government said that Mieti Allah assisted in negotiating the release of those boys. So if Mieti Allah is indeed concerned with cattle breeding alone, if it's just a pastoralist organization, how come they are increasingly becoming involved in negotiating ransoms for kidnaps? And you also saw that the Seriki in Barakpa, Oyo State and all that. Part of the accusation was that the Seriki was also happy to negotiate ransom. So beyond, grazing their cattle, I think the federal government should focus its searchlight more on the activities of this Mieti Allah group. And where you now have a group that have risen to such prominence, such that even governments now sit down to negotiate with them as to how they can run their states. For me, that's worrisome. So it's not the outcome of yesterday's meeting. For me, it's not smelling of roses. If this young man in Igboho, Sunday, DME didn't come out the way he did forcefully, you could see even yesterday morning, there was a bus, it's trending online. There was a bus traveling from Lagos to Benin, and right in the middle of the express, you could see a young girl crying and that the bus was attacked. But the narrative that it was the Fulanis that did that is what I also disagree with. Who was there to see that those who attacked that bus were actually Fulanis. So, but here and there you could see that each time victims are released, the impression they give or their own narrative, their revelation points to the fact that the language spoken by their own abductors appear to be Fulani language, and that is where the issue is
Well, I know that there will definitely be more on this matter, from subsequent papers. So I'm going to throw it now to Lagos. Chamberlain?
Okay, well, Vanguard, expectedly they were likely going to go the same way, 70-30% chance, not like it's a football lottery. But look at the theme, under government's ultimatum, Mieti Allah concedes as herdsmen start registration. So, well, if you want to comment on that briefly, yeah. But just above this one, you equally have ESN versus Army clash. Houses, vehicles burned, many fear dead in Imo. And those images, shocking, they appeared when lots of people saw them. And then eventually the state government declared some curfew. But now, you had to look twice. You say, look, ESN, the report you had, some thought it was IPOB, but now Vanguard is reporting it's ESN versus Army. What do you make of this now? Can you hear me, Iho?
Oh dear. I don't know. Did you hear Chamberlain?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hello?
the lead story.
Hello, Chamberlain. Can you please...
Okay, hope you can now. The lead story on the front page. Okay, I'm not sure that's happening yet. Can you hear me actually? Let's check that again.
Please. Yes, we can, Chamberlain. Please go ahead.
All right, so beyond that lead story we'll see there, we have this just above this lead story, ESN, Eastern Security Network versus Army clash, because initially some had speculated that it was IPOB, but now Vanguard says it's ESN. And then the story, houses, vehicles burned, many fear dead in Imo. What strikes you reading this or seeing this headline?
Well, I saw the story yesterday, and I also saw a video online that is trending where some men in uniform, allegedly Nigerian soldiers, lying on the road and firing their rifles. I'm sure that is worrisome. We saw all of that coming. It all started with some kind of mobilization by Nnamdi Kanu, who is the self-styled leader of the Indigenous Peoples of Biafra, IPOB, and that he was also organizing some young men in the Southeast to defend the Southeast, particularly the bushes and the forest. What all of this just simply point to is the failure of government, is the failure of governance, because the essential duty of government is basically the provision of welfare and security for its citizens. And so when you see all of these regions resorting to self-help, providing their own security, then that only points to one fact, that there is a lacuna in terms of what the government is doing. But rather than the army actually engaging them in a street gunfight, I would have thought that there are other ways to invite these young men and speak to them. Must we always resort to violence in trying to deal with issues? Now, there have been a shootout in Imo State, in Olu, I guess. And then, what if these ESN operatives go underground? Are we then going to start also fighting them as we are fighting Boko Haram? We should find a way to always develop other strategies to deal with this increasing resistance to what is happening in the country. I'm not also sure, I'm not convinced that anyone will want to fold his hands and allow foreign mercenaries, foreign militia group take over your bushes, your farmlands, and then you just fold your hands and sit back. We all saw what happened in the Southwest. The negotiation that was done yesterday, it simply shows that indeed all is not well with our country. The more worrying aspect of all of this is the fact that the presidency is not very forceful, it's not speaking out enough on all of these issues. The UN and the US and all of that has branded Miyetti Allah as a terrorist organization. In fact, the fourth most dangerous terrorist group in the world, if you look at the data and then the security indexes, global security index. So it's only in Nigeria that we still think that maybe that group is just a pastoralist organization. So if outside the country, the perception outside the country is different from what the government in Nigeria sees, that is where you also see that the allegations are coming in that perhaps, there are individuals within the government that is sympathetic to some of these violent herdsmen. I must also make the point here this morning that it is not all herdsmen that are involved in criminality. Yesterday, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, and the Minister of Interior, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, they addressed the media. I was there, and I remember asking them what essentially is the difference between kidnappers, bandits, and there's this other issue that I raised with them, and they just said, basically, they are all criminals. Then what is the presidency, what is the government doing to address the menace that appears to be threatening everyone, even the fabric of our own unity as a country? So a lot still needs to be done, and I do not think that it is the best strategy is to embark on a street gunfight with ESN operatives. They have not disturbed the public. For now, they have not disturbed the public peace.
Still quite some ground to cover.
And their own role, I do not think that if there is a referendum in the Southeast, that the Igbo people will condemn the activities of ESN. So the
some of the
more.
Okay, if we could just move on a little bit. Influx of herdsmen, threat to Delta insecurity. And then on the back page was a huge talking point for football world yesterday. Lampard remains Chelsea legend despite sack. Ibrahimovic insists, and then you have Thomas Tuchel set to take over. So that will be Vanguard this morning.
Well, let's take a look at the Nigerian Tribune next, and it leads with the story of the day, as Maupe called it. Southwest Governors Miyetti Allah agree free-range grazing must be stopped. That's on page 2. You see Ondo quit order targeted at those occupying the forest reserves illegally. Seems to be some sort of clarification coming from the governors. But yes, that's the story of the day, as you might agree. But right under that, you see this one. COVID-19 vaccine, Lagos targets 60% rollout. Engages Pfizer, other vaccine developers. Kakovid supplies FG with oxygen. National Assembly summons Health Minister of a controversial 10 billion released for local production of vaccine. I said this one, most Nigerians not willing To take vaccines, that's coming from a Kabwese. So when you look at all this really put together, what jumps at you?
Well, it's still there's a gap in communication. And most Nigerians do not even believe that there's COVID-19. So that's where it starts from. Before you take a vaccine, you must believe that there's a problem. You know, most Nigerians do not think that there's COVID-19, and even if there is, they think it's a big man's disease. Because if you look at the numbers of casualties that the government have reported, and the media too have reported that COVID-19 have become casualties of COVID-19. It is not the common people. Perhaps, as Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar, when beggars die, there are no comets seen. Perhaps when about the death of princes, that the heavens themselves blaze forth the death of princes. Perhaps the media is focusing more on important personalities that have fallen to COVID-19. Now, the ordinary people that dies of COVID-19, maybe they are not reported, and that is where also I talk about the communication gap. So the ordinary Nigerian cannot connect with this whole campaign about the prevalence and the dangers of COVID-19. So the government will have to redesign its communication such that it has to synchronize with the people. Once the people do not agree that a disease exists, how do you expect them to take treatment? It is only some of us. You know, I came to the studio this morning wearing my mask, and as I was driving along the road, you could just, even in the nation's capital, people do not wear masks. The police that is supposed to enforce even the wearing of masks and COVID-19 compliance regulations, the police themselves are also disillusioned, arising from the last NSAS protest. So there is a lot that is happening, and it is Herculean. It's going to be a Herculean task for this government, to also get people to understand that there is a need for them to take vaccines. And we should also know that it is a fundamental right. It's a human right of any person to refuse to take a drug. So you cannot compel somebody, tie the person down that you must receive injection, a vaccine of any kind. So there is a lot of work to be done. And as long as the government is not also is unable to show, to prove that COVID-19 is claiming so many lives, then so long will it be difficult for the government to convince people to accept
perhaps
vaccines.
that's one of the challenges.
People are concerned with hunger and poverty, much more than COVID-19.
There are definitely a lot of concerns for so many people, including government now. And talking about killing of people, we have this report along with the main headline on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, which talks about no quit notice to Fulani in Southwest, as according to governors, calm in Lagos or your others as police deployed to House of Communities. Don't negotiate with herdsmen, Yoruba leaders say. Northern elders urge Buhari to meet governors. Security remains our priority, according to the federal government. That story you'll find on page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. But right under the nameplate, above that major headline, is this one: 585 killed, 180 injured in 600 crashes in 1 month. That's ascribed to the Federal Road Safety Commission at a meeting which the Corps Marshal himself attended. And he said between December 15, 2020 and January 15, 2021, 585 people were killed, 180 people injured in 600 crashes in just 1 month. What does this mean to you?
That's a staggering figure. Staggering figure, really, and it is worrisome. And another leg even to that story is also the issue of when the Corps Marshal, advised warned Nigerians to stop attacking operatives of the Federal Road Safety Commission. These are government officials, uniformed men, ensuring our safety on the road. But what do some Nigerians do? They go ahead and attack them. And now you can see there is a connection between the bad roads across the country. There's a connection between bad roads, poorly trained drivers, rickety vehicles, and these accidents that has claimed 580 lives in just 1 month. December 15 to January 15 this year. That's very worrisome. I think if you look at, if you compare that to global figures, Nigeria should be ranking very high there on that table. So what can be done? We need to focus more on driver training. How do we acquire our driver's licenses? How many people? How do you take your vehicle to the road, whether commercial drivers, private car drivers? What qualifies a driver to put his vehicle on the road? These are issues. And then the roads themselves. How are the roads? What are the conditions of the roads? A lot of these issues. It is not just enough to talk about, yes, I sympathize with the families of those that have died, over 500 people. This is outside COVID-19 diseases and all of that, road crashes we are talking about. It's really, really disturbing. It also points to the fact that the value of human life in Nigeria is increasingly becoming less.
Well, what do you make of those who say that, we should have the death sentence for those who cause accidents?
The death sentence for those who cause accidents?
And people die in those accidents.
The factors resulting in road accidents are different. For example, like I just said, if somebody is drunk, for example, and then in the state of drunkenness, he's involved in an accident, that's a different scenario. If a driver is poorly trained, it's a different scenario.
Yes, of course, but
there's a mechanical problem on the vehicle.
If it is determined that that person was drunk or something like that, you directly caused an accident, do you think it would be right to say, you deserve the death sentence for causing the death of others?
That would be too harsh. I think that there are already laws to take care of that. We do not have alcohol testing. I don't know whether the road safety has such devices. These are very small. They are not very expensive. We should be growing as a nation. As I was driving and I was listening to a radio station which talked about people beating traffic. And in South Africa, for example, people beat traffic. They won't chase you. They won't run after you. The next 30 minutes or 20 minutes, you just you hear a knock on your door. They'll deliver a letter to you to go and pay your fine. So we should be better organized as a country, not just talking about death sentence for people who. No, I think that would be too harsh. It would be too punitive.
Let's look at leadership now. They have this one. Quick notice. Southwest governors, herders, broker peace is their lead headline. Herdsmen agree to leave forest reserves, assist in fishing out criminals. Federal government allays fears of a heightened tension, warn against politicization of insecurity. Ondo governor statement misconstrued, that's according to NGF. I believe that's the Nigeria Governors Forum. But if you look at the bottom here, this story on the PIB, oil will become irrelevant in 20 years. That's from Lawan. It's on page 10 of the paper. What do you think? Are you optimistic that this time around we'll be able to get the PIB through the National Assembly once and for all?
Yes, you saw yesterday, I was following this story very well, and you saw the international oil companies. They are raising a lot of issues against the passage of the petroleum industry bill. What are their concerns? Basically, the concerns are selfish. These are players in the sector.
Expectedly?
Expectedly, yes. Yes.
Everyone's going to look after the
yes,
interests.
Exactly. And but the good news here, excuse me, is that the Senate President is also insisting that before the end of the first quarter of this year, that bill will become law. So we are already looking beyond the interest of the IOCs, and it is long overdue. Indeed, in the next 20 years, I'm even afraid, will it be up to 20 years, where you already see the gas-propelled vehicles, that are environmentally friendly. More countries are queuing into that, and they are keying into that. More vehicles are being produced that are less dependent on fossil fuel.
So now is the time to maximize what we can out of it. But let us watch and see. First quarter is not too far away.
It's not too far.
It's already the end of January already.
Absolutely.
But we have to thank you so much for always coming to share your time with us this morning. Akeregha is the Abuja Bureau Chief of the Guardian newspapers, and is speaking to us here in our Abuja studios.